All right, I'll entertain a motion. Vice Mayor Waters.
I don't see any reason to move ahead with this.
Here's the motion to not discuss or not initiate the
I think it's
60-day public
premature,
notice
so I move
process
to-
for a future discussion regarding revenue options. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mayor?
Discussion. Councilmember Zinkin.
Yeah, discussion only, because that's where we are right now. The only revenue options that I would like to discuss would be those revenue options that would require voter approval prior to being put in place. And so if you will allow those discussions to occur, you have to keep in mind that if we were ever to come to a consensus, which doesn't look like we're going to, that nothing could happen until it went to the voters and the citizens of this community would decide amongst themselves whether or not they would like to impose those revenue options among themselves. The reason I think that Councilman Gardner is put this back on this thing is we have to, if we're going to do this, this has to be done by July 4th in order to get it on the ballot.
Councilmember Snyder, then Councilmember Garner.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a problem talking about long-range vision for the town as far as what's fiscally sustainable. The timing right now, I think, is poor. We're in the middle of updating our general plan. We're asking opinions of our community, and frankly, I think this discussion would complicate and confuse people. We've recently had discussions about raising revenue through a renter's tax. Then then there was a point brought up about, no, we should reduce the
Utility tax.
Thank you. I'm tired. Utility tax. And so it's kind of a ping pong situation, and I think it's confusing. I think that we have a 5-year plan with the budget. We have certainly a strategic plan that was unanimously approved by this council. We've based our current budget on that. We are still recovering. We're not recovered. We're still tentative about some things. I think it's premature. I don't have a problem with the concept, but the timing for me to initiate a 60-day public notice at this time to do something before the end of the fiscal year with our community, I think is premature, and I could not support it.
Councilmember Garner.
Yes, and I'm glad Councilmember Snyder mentioned the strategic plan, because specifically under fiscal responsibility, item 1, the actions that we agreed to as a council is evaluate opportunities to diversify the town's revenue sources. Now, unfortunately, we're hamstrung by the legislators who have now enacted a rule that we can't even talk about alternatives without noticing our community. Much like we just discussed recently regarding the pension and some other things, we need to do the business, as Bill pointed out very elegantly, in the public sphere. We cannot be doing it behind closed doors. And unfortunately, the legislators have said we have to notice the community of any potential revenue stream increases. Because we notice it, and Ms. Schwab, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we notice it, it doesn't mean we have to act upon it within the 61 days, or we can act upon it at any time during the fiscal year up until the end of December of 14. So it's just that we have to notify the public that there is a potential on the docket potentially in the future that we might discuss alternative revenue streams. I don't think the legislators told us that it's time specific. Is that correct?
Mayor Hiermeth, Councilmember Garner, that is correct.
So what my proposal is, and I can't make it as a discussion point, is that we have a strategy/study session, not a council meeting, so that we can have our staff adequately and appropriately enter in the 5-year projections, maybe even 10-year projections, and we can start to have a discussion towards alternative revenue streams. There was never any, and I want to clarify, there was never any point about a renter's tax. I think the reason why the renter's tax came up was because there was discussions around alternative revenue streams at that time. And then it ended up being played out in the media through editorial comments. I'm trying to avoid all that by at least getting it on the docket, so legally we can have at least a study session potentially in the future to talk about this. So I'm trying to clarify this. I wasn't expecting all the opposition the last time we brought it up. And it seems like every time we bring it up, there's a fear there that all of a sudden we're going to make a decision that we're going to move forward with some type of a tax. I'm the last guy that wants to tax the citizens. but we've got to have some alternative revenue discussion because it's in our strategic plan. So we all agreed on this. So if we want to hang our hat on the strategic plan, let's start acting on the actions in the strategic plan as a council.
Councilmember Hornet, then Councilmember Burns.
I think Bill got it right. Bill Adler, Mr. Adler got it right. Well, I'm not going to give you a blank check. I'm not going to talk about giving you a blank check. You discuss with us some opportunities that we cannot meet, that we need revenue for, and then we'll talk about the type of revenue. But right now, we don't have them. So what are we going to do? Go to the public and say, we think we need some money, we want you to vote on it? Because the first question I'd ask is, what are you going to do with it? Unless you're going to give the community something and you've got a firm plan, it's going to die. And that's what we need. If there's opportunities out there that we can't fund with our current revenue stream, identify those, then we'll have that discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, when I said I was elected, I would second any idea and have any discussion that the council wanted to have, because I think it's good for the public. So I don't know, I disagree that it might not be the right time, but I'm going to follow through with what I said, and I think it's a discussion, and we can take it where we need to, but I think it's discussion that wouldn't be a bad thing to have.
Councilmember Snyder.
And I think the time to have that discussion is when we start looking at our revenue results for the year. We start projecting ahead for next year. You know, I'm with Councilmember Hornet.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. I know it's a shock. That we have to identify what it is that we cannot fund currently.
Yes.
And frankly, there is no fear about a tax. So I'm going to correct you about that. That's for the citizens to decide, not this council to decide. Yes, we do have to have conversation, but there's got to be some education, and there's got to be the timing is right. You know, the general public just heard that we had a $1.7 million surplus at the end of the year. Yes, we've spent that money. You go to the general public and say, gosh, we want to raise, we have a conversation about raising revenues. Well, what do you need to raise revenues for? There's got to be a lot more specificity for the request before I would support it, and the timing right now is, in my opinion, not right.
Would that not be
Councilmember
part
Burns.
of further discussion?
Yes, you can.
I think Councilman Snyder makes a good point. If, I'm assuming you two are going to make the motion, you can just put it on when we're talking about revenues next year and have it in the same time frame. You don't necessarily need it in 60 days, or do you have to actually do it 60 days after you notice it?
It has to be noticed before you can talk about it.
Mayor Hiremath, Councilmember Burns, I think I understand some desires here, and I think there's a way to achieve it in a simpler way. But I would like the opportunity to discuss it with the town manager and the legal services director to make sure we're all on the same page, and look forward to maybe having a study session as part of your budget process.
So right now, there's a motion to not initiate the 60-day public notice for a future discussion regarding revenue options, and a second. And I'll weigh in with, until the town manager and the finance director comes up to me and says, look, this council needs to have a serious revenue discussion. You guys are coming up on the budget time, which you do your budget according to the strategic plan. So I don't understand what the hurry is to notice a 60 days, so there's a rush to get it on the ballot. To me, there's just some ulterior motive going on, and I got a hard time believing that even though the residents are, that you only want to bring revenue sources that go to the voters in this economy are not going to vote to tax themselves. So I don't know what the other ulterior motive is, but there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-2.
May I